Such an honor to reconnect with a guy who has continued to try to pass on the knowledge and lineage of rhythm and music to younger generations of cats who are, in some cases, seeking the authenticity. That my guest was just around in spades. He was somebody who took his craft very seriously. He took what he did very seriously, but he doesn't take himself very seriously. That is the representation of a great artist and creator. Ronnie Burrage, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hi, Jake. How you doing today?
Oh man, it's so good to hear your voice, man. I just did since we last talked. I did about 2 hours of interviews with Yuma Sultan. You know that cat?
Yeah, Zuma. Yeah, man.
Uh,
Absolutely.
I mean,
We
dude. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. No. We did back in the day we did some hits with the great Sonny Simmons, who was
Are you
out of
kidding me? Wait, hold on a second. Because I mean, dude, we spent so much of his time was spent in Topanga Canyon, San Francisco, before he moved to New York, before he went to Woodstock to be with Jimmy. But you recorded with him and Sonny Simmons. I thought that was in the '60s.
no. We didn't record. We did a live concert back when the Knitting
Beautiful,
Factory was
dude.
open. Yeah.
Oh
I'm
my!
pretty sure there's a recording somewhere of it
I'll
because
check it out,
be,
man.
be,
Sonny
before be,
Simmons.
yeah, before Sonny passed, all of a sudden stuff was popping up. Like we did concerts with Cecil McBee on bass.
Oh my God, legend. Yeah.
We did trios with Reggie Workman. And some of those are around and recorded. We actually did that's a really it's really crazy because my first wife, when I was flying to New Zealand to bring her back to the States, the whole time on the plane they were showing this BET episode of the concert that I did with Sonny Simmons and Reggie Workman.
No
And
way.
and the thing that made me so mad is that I never got paid for the session. And they were playing that joint back to back on the airplane.
What you mean? You didn't get paid for the gig, or you didn't see you didn't
We
get paid?
didn't get paid for the gig or the residuals. It was the show that they had that Ramsey Lewis was the host of.
This is just again typical bullshit. I mean, it just goes down. It's Heartbreak Hotel, man.
It
I
is.
if you can just sort of wax poetic on this. I mean, I just I mean, you are not from the generation of Dizzy or McCoy or Cat Anderson or Mary Lou Williams, but you know, you played with Andrew Hill, Jackie McLean, McCoy Tyner, Woody Shaw. You just mentioned Sonny Simmons, so many more cats, and Reggie Workman. And what does it take to play with guys like that? It's not those guys have all the vocabulary. They have the rudiments. They've done their shedding. On top of that, they've played in iconic bands. But in terms of like the mental fortitude of having to play with these guys, they were just cut from a different cloth. And I wanted to know what you felt are sort of the not the physical stuff, but the mental challenges that it takes to play with a master.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, like we were talking about in part one, I kind of was blessed at a very young age to always play with elders who were very, very skilled in their craft and their musicianship, and also had a far reach of the vocabulary from playing with so many others that innovated this music. So for me, it was like I seemed like, I mean, for example, when I first got to New York, as a teenager, everybody's like, "Man, you play like you've been playing. You're an older guy. You're
Yeah,
like you've
right,
been playing.
right, right,
You
right,
don't
right.
sound old, but your conception of the music, um, puts makes us think that okay, you're one of our peers. And in fact." I was pretty much treated like that with everybody I worked with, like those guys, right? And it's like, I didn't really have a peer group that I hung around with. Yo, no, there's some guys that, yeah, we cut our cloths together, like Kenny Kirkland, you know,
Oh my God.
working in my band, and the great Kelvin Bell, guitarist. We came from St. Louis together. Marvin Horn, another incredible guitarist. But they too were kind of put in positions when they were younger of playing with older musicians. So coming to New York, it was kind of like, um we were just kind of like, I don't know, man. Mentally, it was always, I mean, I'm still extremely nervous when I play, no matter how I look or how I act. I'm nervous because I want the music to be at a high bar. So, but with those guys, it was never a thing where they made me feel nervous. How can I put this? It was just a thing where I wanted them to appreciate what I do. So conceptually and mentally, it's a process for me to say. But you know, playing with like a Reggie Workman or playing with a Cecil McBee and all of those kind of guys, it was comfortable for me. It was more challenging for me playing with guys that didn't understand the lineage, I guess, because the vocabulary with them wasn't exactly there,
Okay, well,
unless we
this
were
is
cutting our teeth.
you said one word back when you started this, and I this is where I just want to go a little bit deeper. When you got to New York, cats would say, "Man, your conception of the music makes you feel like you're a contemporary of ours." What
Yes.
what what is that conception? Is it merely not going back far enough in the lineage, or is it just the experience of playing with guys who like they were not they would play as many bars as they wanted. They never repeated anything. The language was completely instilled in
Uh-huh.
them. And you're saying that your generation, if they didn't have that experience, it was not the same conception. What is where what can you talk about that conception?
Yes, I think that conception comes from an openness to the
Yes.
music. Not being, in a place where I felt like I had to play in a certain style because my understanding of music was broad. As I said before, like to play jazz, you can study as much jazz as possible. I mean, like younger cats, they can listen to all of the older stuff, right? And they can emulate people to the T. But to play in an ensemble with people that are older than them, that have had um, an opportunity to not just play that type of music, but other types of music, and being open to how the music takes form and shape depending on where the ensemble, how the ensemble interacts with each other. I think that's the experience that I had that put me there, because I played in so many different types of ensembles, and my direction in playing was never to emulate or sound like anybody from a certain period. Does that
Right.
make sense?
No, dude, you know
So,
what well, the other thing that's really important that we need to talk about that adds to it's interesting because you have this you lived through it and I don't. It was Train, Cannonball, Sonny Rollins, Charles Neville. They all walked the bar before they played jazz. They were playing R&B and blues music.
yeah,
So it was open and it was very visceral and it was feeling music before they got into the more intellectual exercises. But when you merge
yeah,
that, whereas, you get cats today and they're just steeped in studying this intellectualized version of jazz. They've never walked the bar. Not that that really exists. But I mean, dude, they were honking, man. Those cats,
exactly.
it was
I
very
mean,
unpretentious.
it's a lot of people that don't even know that when McCoy was um 18 and 19 years old, he was also playing electric piano and organ with Ike and Tina Turner.
Dude, this is, you just, my brain, that's almost as good a story as when I interviewed Ahmad Jamal, to this day, one of my greatest interviews, and he is in Calumet. He said, I did one of my intros, and I said that he worked in strip clubs, and he said, "How the hell did you know I worked in a strip club?" I said, "That's just that's just what your generation did. If Ahmad and the
Right.
drummer, they'd play. He'd play piano one set, then he'd switch with the drummer. They'd play 8 sets, just switching back and forth at these strip clubs. I mean, it was
Yeah.
insane. But I'm just saying, like, it wasn't the music wasn't too precious. And like Stanley Clark said, I mean, those guys, I don't care if it was freaking Gene Ammons or I mean Sonny Stitt. These aren't like guys that I'm going to and putting on the record player all the time. But when you saw them live, they were playing, the language was embedded, man. It was just
Yeah.
embedded. They weren't thinking about it was going, they'd go on for as many bars. They'd never repeat any ideas. To me, that just comes from R&B, blues, and visceral feeling music, which all those masters had and which you got, you know?
Yeah, the music comes from that. If the music comes from our whole entire
Yeah.
story as a resilient group of people that had to come through terror, first of all.
Right.
And when you think about some of those other elders who were also playing at a time when, they couldn't even walk in the front door to the places that they played, those are the stories that come out in their instruments, right?
That's right.
And so, and the other thing too is with that, all of that music, all of our music, even now, the culture that was built comes out of that. It comes out of that. And I think, like I said, being a younger musician and hearing all of these different types of colors and sounds in the music coming from St. Louis, I was exposed to all of that. There was the hardcore hard bop cast, the hardcore bebop cast, the hardcore avant-garde cast, the hardcore funk cast, the cats who were playing uh, rock and roll. But then, one you see them the other day and they're like at a matinee swinging out with a vocalist, and it's like, there was no like, there wasn't all of these categories and separations and how can I call it?
Yeah, the stratification of the music. It was all together.
Yeah, it was all pretty much together, and you can hear people playing, these all of this language in any type of setting. There was no barriers, there was no boundaries, and so
And even guys
yeah.
like,
And
I mean,
when I first got with McCoy, he was like, the first thing he told me was like, play whatever you hear.
I
I
freaking
mean,
love this stuff, man. This is the Zen mastery of that generation was insane, dude. I mean, it was just like play whatever you hear. I mean, how liberating. But you know what? If you didn't have those experiences, you wouldn't know what he was talking about.
exactly. And I think he felt that from the time, because when my audition, he didn't come in there with a stack of songs. He didn't come in there with any printed music. He just said it was just he and I. We said, because he was doing. I mean, I've told this story before, but he was doing. They were rehearsing for one of the trio records with Jack DeJohnette and Ron Carter.
Right.
So I'm sitting outside the door, and of course I'm like, I'm 18. I'm sweating balls. I'm like,
Oh my
I'm like,
God,
and I'm
dude.
listening to them, but at the same time of my sweat, I was so enjoying. I'm like, man, these cats, those are my heroes, right? And I'm hearing them all in the outside of the door. And when I walk in, I had met Jack already. He had seen me play, so he told McCoy. He said, "Yeah, yeah, this young guy.
He's
Yeah, I
going
think
to play, man.
you're gonna
Yeah,
like him,
yeah,
McCoy.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
gonna like him, man. Yeah, I think you're
yeah.
gonna." He said, so, and then he said, and so he asked Ron. He said, "Ron, you got couple of minutes to stick around." And Ron was like, "No, I gotta run. I gotta run and do this other session." So it was just McCoy and I. No bass, nobody. And I went over behind the drums. I sat down and he said, "Okay, play whatever you hear." And he just started playing. And literally 2 hours with no break later, he said, "Okay, you got the gig." And we went through all types of music and of course he would touch on melodies from his original songs from like the Focal Point record or some other things. Of course, he would slide into a little bit of the modal sound of Coltrane, but it was nothing that was really defined. And he would go into some you know, African rhythms, Afro Peruvian, Cuban rhythms, and you know, just some straight ahead, and then you know, something that sounded like gospel, whatever. We just played, and 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 I played with him, and that's how I got the gig. It was like there was nothing said. He didn't say, "Oh, do more like this," "Oh, or play this like that." Nothing like that
Was
ever.
there? This is the finest. This is the highest form of music right there, because that in most situations would be a total mess. But like you come in there, your ears are wide open. I mean, to me, did that allow you to play um, melodically on the kit? I mean, there's
Absolutely.
there was no the tempo shifting and no big deal with that. Like you could just flow the music, because that was the whole thing about whether it was Jimmy Garrison or Reggie or any of these guys that were with McCoy and Elvin. The sheets of sound were really coming from McCoy and Elvin. I mean, it was just this undulating river. It was like the Nile
Hmm.
or something, and
Yeah.
that's what music is. And so, I
Yeah.
mean, were you playing in one? Was I mean, like, was there really a downbeat, or was it just you were flowing like the water and you could just
No, it's flowing because you know the thing is like I yes, of course he would establish he established the tempo when we first started,
sure,
but then that you know over time it went wherever it went. You know, it was times when there was no tempo. We were just playing, complimenting each other, and see that was the other thing too. I feel so incredibly happy about how I was brought up because I like I did duets with like Julius Hemphill or Hand Me a Blue. There was no bass, there was no piano, there was nothing. And it's just like we created sounds. And a lot of times I didn't even have a full drum kit. And sometimes I
oh
didn't
my
have
god, this is so great,
any
man.
drum kit.
Yeah.
I would just have percussion or pots and pans and just to create something. So I'm my and that comes from like, you know, seeing my uncles and people, you know, whatever was around create music from something. So I kind of had that very young, and I was never afraid to anything, any kind of thing that's in front of me, and just my voice and my body, you know, learning how to do the hand bone and all that stuff. Archie Shep would make me do the hand bone on a lot of different concerts because people don't even understand that lineage, how it came from indigenous Americans and Africans over here together, and that was a form of communication, you know. But of course, there was a song, ham bone, have you heard? But the slapping of the body and all that stuff, that's our first instruments, right? So
That was actually like communication, is what you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I dig.
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, wow.
So I
So
was just
he
blessed
wanted you
to
to do. He wanted you to. He wanted you to do. So I mean, the point is that I mean, it's just that's the other thing that I wanted to ask you about was is like I remember Emil Richards. I mean, I don't know if you ever crossed paths with him, but he was the time he did thousands of studio sessions on top of playing with Mingus and Paul Horn, and he goes way back. He was an out and out.
yeah. He also played with George Duke and Frank Zappa.
And George Shearing too, and Cal. Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody. He said that when he would go see Milt Jackson, who was one of his idols, Milt had the saddest looking vibes that he had ever seen in his life. And the minute that Milt hit the vibes, the soul coming out of the vibes was sonically. Same thing with Harold Jones. I don't know if you ever crossed paths with that legend, the great drummer for
No,
Ghost.
I know his work and his name, but
Right. So
never.
I've done a bunch of interviews with him. He was playing at let's see, it was Dionne Warwick. Somebody had a club in Chicago in Old Town, and he was playing with an organ player and a guitar player, and they both had uh, amps.
Uh-huh.
He was not amplified, so he had to generate sonically through spirit and physicality, soul and physicality. And
Right.
wanted you to talk about experiences that you had, especially before we had pristine PA systems or, perfect sound, and you ran through sound check and all that stuff. The idea of having a sad apparatus, maybe a partial kit, or just something that was like, what the heck? And yet, through physicality and soul, you were able to generate a sound and a feel that was projecting way beyond what anybody would assume could happen with a sad instrument like that.
Wait, let me go back because you said Harold Jones, the drummer, right?
Absolutely.
I know Harold. I absolutely know Harold.
He was
Yes.
Daisy's drummer and Tony
Yeah,
Bennett's
yeah,
drummer.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know Harold. I
Yeah. So
met
Harold's a
him.
great dear friend, and he
I
had
did meet him a couple of times, actually, at the old jazz showcase in Chicago when I played out there a few different times.
exactly. Yep.
Yes, I know Harold. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
corrected
no,
that
so
now.
going, I mean, it was the same thing
For
with
some reason, I was thinking, I thought you were talking about a bass player named Harold. I don't know, but Harold Jones, the drummer, I know.
it's a
So
very common
anyway,
name. I'm
to
sure there are
speak
many. Yeah.
to speak to what you're talking about, it's like
Like I want to say one more thing. And Ndugu told me, rest in peace. He's like, because he's at he's at USC. This is going back 2017, and he said we're getting phenomenal players from all over the world. He goes, and they're having jam sessions amongst each other. He goes, I don't see him playing enough with the guys with rubber bands around their horns. The
right.
the street scholars. I mean, that is what it's. To me, it's like people are obsessed with their gear and they don't realize that it's all this. I mean, you can generate it through soul and physical. I just wanted to give
Yeah.
you an experience where you walked in and you didn't have the desired kit, and yet you just used those intangible things, and it worked out.
Yeah. Well, that's again being comfortable with whatever's around and being comfortable with your own musicality. You don't need anything to make music, and you
Right.
don't need if you're comfortable knowing that, hey, look, I'm going to contribute uh a valuable part of whatever situation I'm in with whatever's in front of me or just with myself, then you're cool. And I'm kind of like that. I'm like, it doesn't matter, I mean, if I got to use my voice or pluck my lips or, or do something, to make sound, um, then I'm okay with that because this music is everywhere. Music is everywhere when you know how to get to it, and
Oh
use
my
what's
God.
there.
Yeah.
But it is important, you say, because you do see a lot of guys. It's like it's all about their gear and making sure everything is perfect. And then I've met so many over the years. I've met so many younger drummers or percussionists. They like, well, how did you do the concert without a bass player? I said, well, can you hear the bass in your head?
Uh-oh, we got the McCoy Zen mastery going on here, dude.
I'm just saying, I
I
mean,
love it. I freaking love it, man.
so I asked these questions. I said, can you hear the if you're playing with a horn player, you can't hear the chords, you can't hear the colors of a chord. If you hear him doing something that changes the definition of sound, or you can't hear, those other colors that are around that he's pushing towards. If you have something that can complement that, it's like you have to be open and you have to be able to be all of those instruments within yourself. Even if you don't play them, you should be able to feel them and bring it to. And if whatever conversation is going on, if it's purely rhythmical without any type of harmony or melody, then I mean that's like a kid in the candy store for me, because it's you tap your feet, you run. When you run, there's sound, there's rhythm. When your heartbeat is always creating rhythm, the way you breathe, all of those things are music. It's all music.
And it's also making something, in a non-traditional setting. The bass player doesn't show up for the gig. You
Oh
gotta
yeah.
you gotta play through that. I mean, that, to me, I mean, Joe Sample was like when the Crusaders were the Nighthawks, or even when they were just traveling before they moved to LA, or to LA, they Joe would show up, and the piano would have missing white keys and black keys. He's like, what kind of dog du jour do I have tonight? He'd have to bang.
Right.
McCoy would have to bang the stuff back into tune. I mean, it was,
Yeah.
and yet it transcended this lower earth realm of the music, transcended it because of that. It was like through that adversity and trust in yourself and sound, the group transcended the earth realm all the time.
Right. Right.
And that is the magic of it all. I want to read you this quote. Uh, I'm sure you've hung with this cat, Joe Chambers, great drummer.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, and we've done a couple interviews, and I really want you to step back because you basically fell into a sound bath as a young kid. I mean, it was the perfect situation because, like you said, there were the beboppers and the free jazzers and the poetry and the funk. But
Right.
Joe, as you know, did anyway. I want to read this. This is a very fascinating, one of my favorite uh, quotes in my thousands of interviews. He said, "The writers and journalists had this term they used called avant-garde. They were
Uh-huh.
talking about free jazz. Stanley Crouch, rest in peace, said
Right.
avant-garde music is what we were doing on Blue Note, not Shep or Albert Eiler. You could hear all the tradition in the Blue Note recordings. We could swing, we could play the blues, and we'd run through changes. Eiler and Shep were around doing their thing, but they couldn't play no tunes. They couldn't play no changes. Those cats were playing altissimo, squeaks, and squawks. They couldn't
Yeah.
get a job at Radio City or backing up a singer. All they could do is what they did. Shep got
Mm.
better, and as of today, he can play changes. Eric Dolphy doesn't belong in that group because Eric was a traditional musician. He knew everything and played in the orchestra. Pharoah Sanders was playing changes way back then. Even when Train started doing the altissimo, they accepted it because they had heard him play before. I just
Mm.
thought that was, I mean, again, that's Stanley Crouch's, what he's talking about is that mid 60s Andrew Hill, Joe Henderson, Bobby Hutcherson stuff on Blue Note. That was the real avant garde because he said we could swing, play the blues, and run through changes so you could hear the tradition, but also adding new colors. Whereas Eiler and Shep, and I've gotten conflicting reports on this, but they were just playing, they were just squeaking and squawking. And the point is that they were taking gigs away from Joe Chambers, is what I'm trying to say. And so
Ah.
there was a competition then, you know,
Yeah.
and I
So
just wanted you to talk about your perspective, even though I know you were just burgeoning, really just still a young kid at that time.
yeah, but I gotta speak to a little bit of Dr. Chambers,
Yeah, do it.
because as incredible as he is, and as much as he knows I love him, he carries a bitterness at times that
You're
I
100% right. You're
I
100%
just do
right. Yeah.
not agree with, and I never have. And sometimes, when I see Joe and when I talk to him, it takes about 10 minutes for me to break him down where he can finally just be like, "Oh, well, hey, Barrage, how you doing?" Because
I
it's
love it,
like
man. Good. I
he
love
still
that,
has this
man.
thing like, you got to come to him as if he's a god. So in terms of in terms of taking gigs from him, I think that probably was more on him being perceived with this persona that he gives off, that as opposed to, because a lot of people that I know from his generation and other musicians, you know he he's not that easy to get along with, on general. So
No,
but
dude, Mr. Barrage, I just want to say, in my two audio phone calls with him, there was nothing really antagonistic about it, but
yeah.
but you can tell that he definitely alienated owners, club, anybody that was offering that gigs were around, because if you didn't bow to him, then he would just
Yeah.
give you an attitude because he was that freaking good. But still,
Yeah.
it got in the way of employment.
Yeah, well, I mean, and to speak to Joe, because I'm kind of in that territory with him where, I alienated different people because I demanded a certain thing, and there was a time where club owners wanted you to play a certain kind of way, and I was never that type of
Right.
musician. I would never just say, okay, well, I'm just going to play like this to get the gig. That's not music for me, and that's not how my soul breathes. So in that respect, that's why Joe is a warrior to me, and he's always will be, and he's held it the highest art for him. But I can also speak to him as a human being and as a man that a lot of things, like I said, I made my first statement. I'm not going to repeat it. Now, in terms of people taking gigs from him, like I said, I made that statement. But I have to also speak to a truth for me. Hearing that music where people were saying Isler and Shep and other players were just squeaking and squawking. For me, there was a resonation uh, of my soul when I grew up hearing that music. It was the same resignation that when I heard Curtis Mayfield sing, or when I heard
Like Donny
Aretha
Hathaway or
Franklin
something.
sing.
Yeah, Donny Hathaway. Yeah.
And it's like, and I don't. It's for me just as a young person hearing that music, it resonated a way that it made my emotions want to jump out of my body, if I could say it like that. So I wouldn't agree so far that but the labels again of avant-garde and this and hard bop and that and this and that and the other, I use them too, but that's a label. Those are labels that other people put on our music. And so, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, when I grew up and I heard all of this incredible music that came out of the black struggle, it all resonated with me in a different type of way. And typically the music started first um, as a feeling, not as an intellectual thing where I tried to analyze what was being done. Does that? Is that?
Ronnie, I want to tell you something. One thing about Joe also, being somebody who was a disciple of Max Roach. I mean, the amount of I don't blame him for being having a shield up. The amount of
Not at all.
the amount of I think he just is exhausted. Like I think the point was that whereas sometimes with Eiler and Shep and that tribal scream and the scream of the ancestor, like I think it was visceral and it was real, and yet
Mhm.
just the idea, like he said, understanding that, like recognizing the some people couldn't recognize what the tune was, So he's
Uh-huh,
talking
uh-huh,
about
uh-huh.
he's talking
Yeah,
about incorporating all the tradition, playing the blues, and then being able to play changes, and so there's like, and like the whole thing about drummers not being leaders, and the idea of race records. I mean, Joe is a historian. My head would
absolutely.
explode if I had to, revise all of history, which is basically what's happening all the time in our country anyway. But it's just
Yeah.
like exhausting. So he has to come up against these Luddites all the time. And so, and again, I should be clear. Stanley Crouch was the one that said that, and I really never, outside of that, I don't. He's just a journalist, and quite frankly, I mean, I'm just reading this clip the other day about. I don't know if we talked about this in the, freaking. They're asking Bill Evans because Jet Magazine wrote that Miles walked out of the Grammys in '71 after Bill won another Grammy, and they said it was a. Bill said it was a made up white. They're trying to make it a white black issue. They're trying to make it a race
Yeah.
issue. And he's like, if anybody knew about me and Miles and our history, they'd know that this doesn't hold water. So I'm just
Right, right.
my feeling is this: as a journalist, I pray that I would have been open minded enough to not lunge at some kind of, because I just wouldn't want. I know it existed, and I know like the skipper Henry Franklin. He told me there was a clear divide. The Stan Getz school, the John Coltrane school. There's always this divide, and yet still through it all, the community of musicians seem to be able to transcend that. So I mean, at the core, I guess all I'm trying to say is I love Joe, and I just feel like what he was talking about is interesting, just because you do talk to a lot of Cats players who said that uh, that I guess maybe you would lose the audience at a certain point because it got a little bit too out. Not the
Yeah.
not the weather reports and the early return to forevers and the
None
but
yet.
yeah, just sort of
Yeah, let
more
me
of
stop
the
you for a second because I know exactly what you're talking
yeah
about.
yeah
I've been in ensembles
yeah
where that we've had that type of feedback. You know what I mean?
right.
And that's okay. I mean, if you think about it, music should at some point lose the audience, or music should at some point uh, have the audience thinking about something other than the ordinary, as
Absolutely,
opposed to.
absolutely.
I'm good with all of that, and but I need to go back to and address some of this thing about the um like the Stanley Crouches and those types of things, because
Yeah, please.
everybody knows Stanley was a frustrated drummer. He wanted to play this music so desperately, but he didn't have the wherewithal to really understand enough of the music to do that, so he
Interesting.
became a journalist. And
Interesting.
Stanley was one of the people that also started it. Like journalists now, they're paid to write about certain people as opposed to just finding uh people or artists. Nobody writes about me, so I'm gonna be
No, but I
first
mean
first
that's
of all
why I love being
very
unattached
honest
because
about this. And I remember years ago that Stanley was at every gig I did, and he would write about other people that I'm playing with and not me, until he saw me with Sonny Rollins. And then all of a sudden he
wow.
starts to write about me for just a short period of time, because he says, "Oh, I think he even said something about, oh, he finally learned how to swing." And this is after seeing me with McCoy
Oh
Tyner,
my
with Sonny
God, man.
Fortune,
Oh
with
my
Woody
God, man.
Shaw, with
Come
all of
on,
these other
man.
people. But until he saw me play with Sonny Rollins, then all of a sudden I was able to hold my own on the kit and swing. And I just
So
looked at
freaking
that and I just
obnoxious, man.
laughed and I said, "Man, really?" But it's okay. But all I'm trying to say is that
Yeah.
this stuff has been so um some journalists, they write from the heart and not intellectually. And I what I'm trying to say is a lot of people have come to read these critics' reviews, and they want to analyze being at the performance themselves, which is kind of impossible to do. No matter how much you trust a writer, it's nothing like being there yourself, or having enough opportunities to hear enough music where you can formulate your own I you know idea about how the music moves a certain person. And I do know that there's a lot placed on a lot of music writers and what they say, but a lot of times it doesn't, with the musicians and the artists, it doesn't resonate that well. Wait a minute, you got a whole different perspective of what I was playing, or even the reason I was playing. And I've heard this from so many people that have been writing, and as we know too, the way it has morphed now to where, you know, I mean, we see how Wynton's career has taken off, and it was because of certain writers constantly writing about him and being paid to write about him, while at the same time there's an ocean of other capable, um, skilled, very viable artists that just got overlooked. So,
I mean, what you just said is just so funny. I mean, literally the last 72 hours of my life has been absorbed with Yuma Sultan and Ronnie Barrage. And what happened in when you were in St. Louis cutting your teeth, um, uh, Newport Jazz Festival got kicked out of Newport. And so they
yeah,
got moved to New York and they started doing Newport in New York. And, they had a full R&B, Roberta Flack, Curtis Mayfield, BB King, Les McCann. And then the other side was like, Max Roach, Mary Lou Williams,
yeah,
Dizzy,
Mingus,
Percy Heath, Menges, right. So yet Yuma is in New York at that time, and he's looking at it, and it's Newport in New York, and there's just legions of all these ridiculous cats who were putting their stamp on a new Black awareness with Strata East, with Stanley
Yeah.
Crouch, with all, and they were not represented at all. So, I mean, again, him and Sam Rivers and all these
Yeah.
guys, they went out and I mean, again, these were free concerts, but they were going all over the city to public places, parks, and putting on events to showcase all the cats that were not getting any exposure. And the problem, even now today, more is that in the past, I mean, whether it was Jimmy Smith, Mingus, I mean, there was a cadre of heroes. Today,
Yeah.
today they tend to focus on one person, like a
Yes.
win, and it's like a LeBron James. Like it's just this inherent focus on one person as opposed to having a cavalcade of really recognized people. It just was fascinating
Right.
in some ways. I mean, none of the stuff worked perfectly. I mean, when Gil Scott Heron came out with the bottle on Strata East, I mean, him
Yeah.
and Brian Jackson, they were shipping records out of the kitchen. They didn't have enough. They didn't even have a shipping department. They couldn't keep up with the popularity of it. So it didn't.
Right.
It's never been a perfect. It's been far from perfect, but this obsession with, well, okay, we're being paid to write about somebody, and if we keep doing this with Jazz at Lincoln Center, there's good money. It's all just about the commerciality of it, which waters down the actual art itself. Um,
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
just find that story about Crouch is so classic because, he wouldn't talk about you with all these shaman cats, but then, with Sonny, it's finally like, there's one guy because I used to be fascinated uh, with him, and is a guy named Oliver Sane.
Oh yeah, St. Louis.
I mean, who he is often forgotten about, and I just wonder what that was like. That kind of music that was not necessarily straight ahead jazz.
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, it's crazy that you brought up Oliver because this cat, he had recordings because I used to rehearse with Fontella Bass as a kid in his studio,
Right,
and
right.
they had recordings of all of that shit, and
Oh my God,
I'm
dude.
wondering who has that, you
Oh my
know,
God, dude. I
and
pray they're in some storage units. Please, man. Where are they?
yeah, where are they? I would love to find out where they are, and whoever, even if they still have those things. But yeah, I know Mr. Sane. I used to hear him on occasion, growing up in St. Louis, and I knew all about. And then I ended up doing things over at the studio, and even playing some things with him, and I never heard what happened to it. And all of that stuff was recorded. So yeah, I don't know, but
the other thing I was going to ask you about
But
is that
you would hear Oliver playing everything. He had, I mean, he played. He was incredible. He played any everything, wherever the music was taking him, he played it.
right, but you would consider him like from like Cannonball Coltrane generation, or was he where was he, or was he like a more like a Fats Domino rock and roll guy, or what, or he did everything?
I think he had a bit of all of that. He
Yeah.
definitely had a bit of because also he was working during time when Ike and Tina Turner was pretty popular, and
Wait, hold on.
so
I got to ask you, how did McCoy get that gig? By the way, how did that happen?
I think he told me. I mean, he saw them somewhere and they needed a piano player, and he went up and played, and he did gigs with them. He actually went on the road with them for a little
Oh
short
my
time.
God, they were on the
You
Chitlin
know,
circuit together, probably.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, and yeah, McCoy did a lot of things too. I mean, he drove a taxi cab, and those little times he was driving it, he met other people. He played a lot of different music. He didn't just emerge with Coltrane, which people have a tendency to
Right.
to
It
think.
started there. It didn't start there. Yeah.
Right.
Um. Did did Uh, did you cross paths with Miles?
Not very much. I played at his was it his I played at a family's wedding and he came through there in Illinois before I left St. Louis.
Because I mean,
And
he's
you
from
know,
East St. Louis. I mean, I'm curious about
he's
this.
from East St. Louis and we did it in East St. Louis where this wedding was. I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it was it might have been his brother's daughter or something. It was a family member, and I played at the wedding reception. And I met Miles, and I met his brother, and everybody. And we never really crossed that many other paths until New York. Um, Actually, I was supposed to get a shot at being in the band uh, during the time that Al Foster I think, was about to transition. But I
Right.
got blocked out of that gig from Al blocked me actually, and because Marcus was playing in my band. This is before I think even Marcus got the gig, but Marcus was in band Burrage with Kenny Kirkland, and we were playing at the Brecker Brothers Club like on a regular Seventh Avenue
Dan
South.
Barrage, Seventh Avenue. This is so sick, man.
Yeah.
Oh my
Actually, it was the
God,
Barrage Ensemble. It
man.
started as Barrage Ensemble. I still have the flyers. We played Seventh Avenue South, McKell's,
Oh
the
my
very first
God.
jazz forum, all these places. We went down to DC. But there was talk because Boo or Blakey, Elvin, everybody used to come to my gigs. George Benson, they would all be there hanging out at Seventh Avenue South. And it was talk that Miles was coming down to check me out. And then the next thing I knew is I called Al because at that time Al and I was kind of on a really cool talking basis because he was playing with a guy named Teruo Nakamura who when I came to New York I started to play with Teruo because
Yeah, I know
Al
that
had
name.
moved on and did other things, right? He had a band, Teruo had a band called Rising Sun. So and so Al, I called Al and he just went off on me on the phone. He was like, "Hey man, Miles just don't come down to see anybody." I was like, "What? What? Huh?"
Yeah. Well,
So it's like he I think there was something going on where I don't know exactly, but something was going on. He was leaving the band, and I don't know if it was he wanted to leave the band, but I know the chair was going to be open. And so there was a spot because other people had told Miles about me. So then years later, I didn't get the spot. Years later, Ashford and Simpson had a club called 2020, and the mother of my middle daughter was the hostess there. And so I was playing at that club every other week with Leon Thomas, Donald Smith, and Don Pate on bass. And
dude, Don Payton,
the
my
ba-
hero, dude, my hero.
so we were playing there, and then Miles was coming in, and Miles came in, and the like I told you, the mother, my lady at that time, he hit on my lady,
Of course, I
and
used to
so
it all the
and
time.
she came and told me about it. So I went up to the VIP section. I say, "Hey, Miles, man, why you hit on my lady like that?" He said, "What else am I supposed to do? She mine." I said, "Oh shit." So I said, "By the way, how come I never got a chance to play in your band?" He said, "I don't know, shit happens." I was like, and that was all his answer was. So then let's fast forward about 8 or 9 years. I'm touring with Wayne Shorter, and what we're touring in Europe, and every concert is Miles and Wayne. And so, as you know, Miles he never would end the concert. He would always start the concert. So Miles would play, and then we would play. So there was a chance for us to play together in Montreux, and this was the biggest selling night at the Montreux Jazz Festival. Miles and Wayne, right? So Miles was there. He's like, "I've been here, y'all, so I'm gonna play with y'all tonight." And we were like, I'm excited. I'm like, "What? Wait, I'm gonna get to play with Wayne and Miles." And so let me before anybody gets too excited, it never happened. So this is what happened.
Oh,
Claude Knobs who was the director producer of Montreux, along with Sting. Everybody knows Sting. They had a co-production where they were bringing out Vinx. You know, Vinx was just hitting the scene as a percussionist. So they had the brilliant idea, let's put Vinx between. Now they were both drunk because I saw both of them backstage and through the casino and everything, and they're laughing and chuckling, and they're like, "Yeah, let's put Vinx in the middle of Miles's set and Wayne Shorter's set." And so it took them 20 minutes to set up the set. Miles doesn't wait for shit. He left, and Wayne was pacing, and I'm like, Wayne, just tell them no. This is the thing where it really hurt me about Wayne is that he's very passive. He is a very passive person. He did not like to be combative. He just let things happen. And so that's what happened. The entire band, myself, Jeff Andrews, Jim Beard, we're all like, Wayne, tell them no, tell them no. And he wouldn't do it. And so Miles went home and you know, we saw Miles um like in the
Wow.
next day or something at another festival, right? And it wasn't that it didn't happen. It never happened again.
Damn.
But Miles is like, I saw y'all on the TV. It was killing. That's all I know, but I never got to play with him.
I got to be honest with you. I don't know who's this percussionist you're talking about.
Oh, Vinx. Vinx. He did he was doing a few things back then. I think this must have been uh he's still around today actually. We just got he sent me a message on LinkedIn and I was like, "Hey man, how you doing?" you know. But he's a percussionist and that was his very first coming out, and it really was a flop because everybody left the concert hall because it took them 20 minutes to set up a solo percussionist,
I
which
just
was
want to be clear
crazy.
too. Without this moronic idea from Sting and the other producer, it would have been Miles Wayne and your band just cooking.
No, no, I was playing with Wayne, so it would
Yeah,
have
that's
been
what I'm saying. It
Miles
was Miles
sitting
and
in with
you
sitting
and
in with
Wayne's band.
Wayne. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
Well, I mean, this is. I mean, Randy Brecker has such the. I mean, so many great Miles stories. A lot of times it's a boomerang where you feel crushed. Something happens, then Miles comes back around and says something to you that you're like makes you think for the next 3 weeks about what he meant. And there was
Right.
just. I mean, I think that's the point. Is like even Liebman told me through the '70s, jazz was still a black subculture, and if you were hip enough in different communities, you were hip to it.
Yeah.
A lot of schools they rejected the whole premise of the that it was an actual musical form, so it was actually not in the schools, which was kind of a blessing because people were able to really formulate their own individual sound and style of playing. And
Yeah.
I just wonder, like, where you see, um, because like you said, Billy Childs or whoever it is. I mean, you know, the universities provide employment for a lot of the older generations, and I just wonder what you think would, what you see the direction of melodic improvisation, um, in our lifetime.
Well, I think right now we're in a good space because a lot of the black teachers that are teaching, they're going back to I have to say go back to more of the reasons why they play music as opposed to trying to teach a formula that a lot of the universities are pushing to teach, right?
Yeah, because
I mean,
that's how they can get budgets is by making it all quantifiable, and none of that makes ties into the reasons why you actually play this music.
right, right. So I mean, I'm feeling just for the fact that like we kind of touched on it the other day, where we are in our lifetime of the things that are going on. I want to believe that the musicians teaching at these institutions are looking at that and starting to address the reality of where this music comes from. I know, I've taught in universities forever, and I haven't taught in some of the schools of music until the last, I guess, 6 years or so. Well, that's not true because I mean, I did a lot of other things, but I've never taught from a curriculum that was given to me. I've always taught from my experience, and it has nothing to do with passages in a book or anything like that. It has to do with how do you make your ensemble um, play together as one? How can I help you to understand different colors as a means of improvisation, as opposed to scales and mode going through a harmonic structure? So those types of things. And that comes from, I guess, the diversity of people that I played with that were never that no one that I played with ever talked about or demonstrated playing those types of things.
Right.
They all talked about and played from how they felt at the moment and something that they experienced through the time and the day, and of course the way they built um, their mechanics to navigate through changes and things like that. So I really want to feel like that the things that we are going through as human beings are going to change the way we teach, because the institutions, they don't have any power anymore. I mean, first of all, budgets have been cut and slashed. So I don't think anybody is trying to hold on too much. I mean, to doing a curriculum that was given to them when they know that, hey, right now it's like my job ain't it, it could go tomorrow.
Right.
So
Right. 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 I
my
mean, you're
gut
hanging
and
on
my
for dear life.
feeling,
Yeah.
my gut and my feeling and my heart is that I hope that people are teaching our experiences now as opposed to teaching something out of a book,
Do you
you
feel
know.
like is there and I'm talking recent memory, like in the last 10 years, have you had an experience with a younger cat similar to the one where Ron C couldn't stick around and it was just you and McCoy rocking for 2 hours, and after that you knew that you had kind of passed the Rubicon? Does that stuff happen?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That to me is
Absolutely.
more important than anything else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The thing is, here's another thing. I'll just give you a true example. It's like I don't, you know, I have a big band at Brooklyn College, right? And Brooklyn College has no money for, I'm the only thing jazz at the college, and there's no money at all for that, right? So I have my jazz ensemble slash big band on Tuesday evenings from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Now I have more than 15 students in that, right? So there's no way I have like one-on-one time with them to teach them any types of theory, and I wouldn't do it anyway. So what I do is give them an eclectic mix of music that we're playing,
Right.
all pretty much from great black composers, but it's not just jazz or in the tradition of jazz. And what I do with them is show them ensemble playing and how to interact with one another. And when we touch on improvisation, yes, I've given them the blues scales. We run the blues scales and other types of things to get through, but I don't. Is you can't go into one-on-one teaching like that. You know what I mean? Because
No, and that's
first of all,
fine.
there's no time or anything like that. But what I get back from the students is that they are itching to dive deeper, and learn more. And I give them the tools to do it on their own as opposed to, um, trying to run to another institution and get it from a book. I give them the means to be able to hear and differentiate different things that they hear from recordings, but also what we're creating in the space together, because it's all valid when you have a passion to learn this music. I have also students that have been browbeaten so hard because I have students that came over from the classical section where they got enough money to, there's always there's like 2 to 3 different concerts in from the opera department or the symphonic department or the wind ensemble, as opposed to we only get one concert a semester with the jazz, right?
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Because yeah, but it's like I'm getting students from those other sections, um, over the last few years, because they're getting an opportunity to actually play. If you're in the jazz ensemble, you're going to play, because I'm definitely going to point to you and say solo, And if you have no vocabulary to solo, I'm like, play what happened to you today. Show me some emotion, make some sounds and colors. And so they're learning that type of way, and I think
No,
and I feel really good about it because
my
they
final
continue
question.
to come back. And
My
even after
final
they graduate, they'll come back to be in the ensemble.
my final question is set to Brother Barrage is, do you, because um uh do you allow, I mean, one thing that drives me really insane, and we're talking, I really do see a younger generation of cats who are searching philosophically for the reasons why they're doing this music and the calling that they have. And yet they still feel the need, because we've gone so far on the other direction, to have iPads on the bandstand, sheet music on the bandstand. I mean, McCoy and Coltrane, if there was sheet music on the bandstand, that was a rehearsal. Max Roach would
Yeah.
say, uh, if you have music on this bandstand, there's no magic. And I see, and yet these guys are still great. And when they actually disappear into the void, and you start seeing the smiles and the fact that this is like whatever they're kind of going fishing, it's just like, do you in that band setting, you may not get one-on-one instruction, but do you allow sheet music on the bandstand?
I do allow sheet music simply because I'm always um, writing new parts. For example, I have some students that their reading ability is at high level. I have others that are not. And so I'm constantly adjusting things to make it work for their level. But at the same time, the very first thing I tell them is, once we settle on your part, I want you to learn it so that you don't have that music in front of you, so that you can be free with it. You have to learn the parts, and then you can unlearn them when it's time for us to play together and you have a spot to shine. But I mean, yes, I do that because I'm, like I said, I like to modify the music to adjust to different sounds. And also, like, I'll take a, I'll just be real. I got an alto player who couldn't really play the rhythms for the part that the piece of music I wrote called for. So I took the part that I gave the viola player and gave it to him, because it's more whole notes, more eighth notes, and things like that. And I took the other part and gave it to the viola player, who she's never really played anything like that, So they're learning at the same time. I'm allowing them to have the music there for a time being. But when we do our concert, no, the absolute the requirement is like, no, we're not going to have music. Of course, there's a few that, you know, if they don't have the music, they're not going to be able to play the thing, because just of where they are level wise as a musician. But I would say more than 50% of the students do not have music on when it comes time for the concert, so that because they have to know the music by then.
Well, man, listen, let's pick this up. Let this breathe for a minute, but yeah, let's definitely do set three the next couple months, and because it's been great, man, very eye opening, and really, honestly, man, you're keeping the whole thing alive, not just through um, spirit and soul, but also just through a lot of knowledge and creativity and writing, and that's what I'm all about. I mean, I as a rogue journalist, I don't have to. I'm not being paid to ask questions to certain people. I can
Right.
just go and find, like with us, it just, you find people and it keeps building. And, You know, I may never get to some cats, but I don't really care. Like, I am excavating those who deserve recognition, and you're one of them, man.
We need you, and we need you, and we appreciate the work that you're doing, man. I really like that. You going for the things that resonate with you, and that's
That's
what's
right.
very important.
That's right.
I sent you a link before we go really quickly because you talked about something about amplification earlier in this
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
So I sent you a link of an incredible concert where we only had there was no bass amplification, there was no microphones on the drums, and there was I think only two stereo mics in the concert hall, and it's an amazing show.
Oh,
You'll
that's
check
great.
it out later.
You sent it yesterday?
I just sent it while
You
we were
sent it. I'll
talking
check it
today.
out, man. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
No,
All
man. Let's
right,
stay in
Jake.
touch because if I'm when I'm back in Long Island, I'll in June. We'll make plans to get together. If not, we'll do an interview before then. All right.
Beautiful, man.
All
All
right,
right, you
man.
stay
Keep swinging,
safe,
bud.
man,
Be good,
and keep celebrating that birthday all year.
dude. All year, dude.
All right,
All right. Be
later.
cool, man. Much love. Later.
All right, later.